Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the Centurion cards, but we're focusing mostly on the ruling aspect and what the cards do. So, first card we really have to cover is going to be Stand-Up Centurion. So, Stand-Up Centurion says, this card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects while you control a Centurion monster card. You can only use each of the following effects of Stand-Up Centurion once per turn, so it's 2 hard once per turns here. During your main phase, if this card was activated this turn, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. And this will be as cost, so if we are under like a macro, we wouldn't be able to activate the effect to place at all. Place 1 Centurion monster from your deck in your spell trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. And then we have if a monster is special summoned, you can immediately after this effect resolve synchro summon 1 synchro monster using monsters you control as material, including a Centurion monster. So the second effect allows you to essentially just quick synchro anything as long as you use a Centurion monster, and the Centurion token also counts as a Centurion monster. So Wake Up Centurion here can trigger this, and this is off of any special summon. So if your opponent special summons a monster, you would be able to activate Stand Up Centurion as well. So you don't have to be the one that triggers it, but you would prefer to do so because well, whenever you can do this, it'll be all fine and dandy, you know? Having to wait for your opponent to do it is just definitely not preferable. So maybe they actually have normal summon a guy, you do this, and then you choose not to synchro for whatever reason. Maybe you want to hold off on it because you want to summon, let's say, Legadia here, which is essentially a pop, but your opponent does not control a monster, so you want to wait for them to special summon, trigger Stand Up Centurion, and then pop whatever they special summon, right? So this play, not that great because your opponent could just, um, let's say we have Auxilla in the attack position, your opponent here, uh, they might have summoned a guy like normal summon for a turn. So they can just crash, go evenly, and you would be relatively cooked at this point. And that's just potentially a thing that could happen. So yeah, probably best to initiate the special summon yourself, unless your opponent, well, you have like decent control over what your opponent is able to do. So first thing we should really cover is the first line. This cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects while you control a Centurion monster card. So noticeably, this doesn't say monster, only monster card. And what does this mean? So let's assume we have Centurion, Primera in our spell and trap zone alongside Trudea. And they are both specifically in our spell and trap zones. So let's assume this is what happened turn 1. So we normal summon Trudea, we activate Stand Up Centurion, and then we normal summon Trudea, we put Primera and Trudea in the back row, and then Stand Up Centurion we might grab like Gargoyle or Emeth, doesn't super matter which one. And then let's say all of these guys are now in the back row. Since we got Maxied, we don't want to special summon any more this turn. So all of our guys all in the back row. So technically, if we were to then read this wrong, we would control 0 Centurion monsters. So let's assume our opponent has Twin Twisters. So they try to Twin Twisters maybe like the Primera and the Stand-Up Centurion. The Primera in this case would get destroyed and not the Stand-Up Centurion. And the reasoning behind this is because we do in fact control a Centurion monster card. 3, in fact, we control Centurion, Primera, Trudea, and Emeth. And in which case, if they actually targeted Emeth, Emeth would not be destroyed as well because Emeth would be protected by the Primera. But yeah. This is protected because these are monster cards, but not monsters, if that makes sense. So this ruling is really noticeable if we go to DD and we go to the only card I know that actually cares about monster cards versus monsters. So once per chain, when a monster card your opponent controls activates its effect. So this counts pendulum scales, and pendulum scales, of course, are effectively like continuous spells. So they're technically kind of spell cards. But it doesn't change the fact that they are also technically monster cards. They are not monsters, but they are monster cards, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how the ruling works and why these mechanics can be chained to pendulum cards and kind of suck them up. It's the same kind of concept for Stand-Up Centurion, and as well as Centurion Phalanx. This targets a face-up monster card on the field, banishes it, and then special summons it back to the owner's field the next turn. During the standby phase of the next turn specifically. But yeah, that's essentially how the field spell works, I guess. Pretty lengthy explanation, but we gotta be thorough. Alright. And then another thing that's noticeable about the Centurion cards is usually these guys all have essentially what can be broken down into two effects. So they have their unique effect that is in general different from the other Centurion monsters. And then these guys will have the shared effect of being able to special summon themselves if they're treated as a continuous trap. So in which case they can special summon themselves. So if we go here as well, yeah. So every single one of these guys has these two effects. So we could special summon ourselves if we are a continuous trap, and then the other effect. If we use the other effect, we can no longer special summon these cards, period. After we activate their effect. So in case of Emeth here, if we were to special summon Emeth, then, well, with its effect, then we would not be able to special summon MF if it is treated as a continuous trap for whatever reason later. Or if we perhaps had like 2 copies of Primera somehow. Like perhaps we special summon a Primera off of the Phalanx, and then we still have one treated as a continuous trap. If we activate the effect to search, we cannot special summon the other Primera. So that's kind of how that works. So that's just a little bit of a gimmick with the Centurion cards. And Legadia and Auxilia actually also have slightly different effects as well. So of course, we're just going to focus on the end phase effect here. So Auxilia specifically says you can place one of your non-synchro Centurion monsters that is banished or in your graveyard in your spell and trap zone as a face-up continuous trap. So this works on banished cards as well. Legatia actually is only from hand or graveyard, whereas this is banished or graveyard, but not from hand. So they both work a little bit differently. And they also both have like a bit of a protection effect. And this only works while they're on the field, I believe. So that's how that works. And just saying, I guess, the destruction here is optional. And I think that's the important part here. The next thing we want to cover, I guess, is the fact that Gargoyle, I guess, is the only Centurion with 3 effects. It's not going to be like super impressive, but it does have 3 effects. So one of the things that Centurion is actually fairly good at is specifically completely playing around Ash Blossom Jewel Spring. So if you have certain hands, you can completely play around Ash Blossom Jewel Spring. It is not even possible to activate, right? So if I were to open a 1-card hand, of course I can be Ash Blossom. But if I open a 2-card hand, that is not the case, right? And even then, there is 1 card that, well, 2 1-cards technically. No, wait, not 2, right? Yeah, 2. You have 2 different 1-cards that can play around Ash Blossom Joe Spring, where you don't completely lose out on your play. So if we have Emblema Oath, or we have Stand-Up Centurion, both of these cards cannot be ashed. None of the things listed on these cards are possible to hit with Ash Blossom Joe Spring. So we can then just place a Trudea, and then Trudea will place the Primera. And in this case, if we get ashed on Primera, we can still special summon Trudea next turn to make Legadia. So we have that play. But if we have 2 cards, so let's say we have uh, Emblema Oath, and we have Stand-Up Centurion, or we have like Trudea, Stand-Up Centurion, or Trudea plus Emblema Oath, we have this play. We can activate Trudea and Stand-Up Centurion so that we definitely have a Primera in our back row, and we have a different Centurion monster. So it can be Gargoyle too here in this case, right? And these will both be continuous traps, so we can now chain both of these together. So we go chain, the chain order doesn't matter, so we can go chain 1 Primera, chain 2 Gargoyle, and then next chain we can do Primera, chain 1, and then we can chain 2 the field spell, so that chain blocks Ash Blossom Joe Spring. And then when we do our special summon, we can then go into Auxilla, and then we can now once again go chain 1, Auxilla, chain 2, Gargoyle to add back to hand. And there is no chance for you to drop the Ash Blossom Joe Spring here. Next turn, we will have Primera and Trudea in our spell and trap zones, so we can then go chain 1 Primera, chain 2 Trudea, and then chain 1 Primera, chain 2 Stand-Up Centurion once again. And that will allow us to search Emeth to then put one of our Centurion cards in the back row, so in this case probably Legadia. Or not Legadia, Auxilla. And then that can make our like Centurion True Awakening live. So something like that, right? So that's the general idea. But big downside. So I have bad news. So all we can do is chain block Ash Blossom Joe Spring, and like maybe technically I guess chain block like Cypher Gear Gamma is technically also possible. But it doesn't quite get you anywhere. I would say not. So if we Gamma on Auxilla when it's trying to set the Primera, that kills like a lot of your plays just for the next turn and even the turn after, so that's no bueno. If we were to Gamma like Primera, if you just had to summon Primera first, which can happen, that's bad. Auxilla, we can also negate this, negate both effects, same thing, really bad. If we Crow the Primera, we can also Bistral the Primera because it's light, so that's gone that way. And if we Imperm Primera, that we don't need to, but if we Imperm Primera or Effect Failure Primera, it can be kind of bad situationally. But what is always bad is if Auxilla gets like hit by the Imperm or Effect Failure, in which case you might just end up on no plays after making Auxilla, which is really bad. So your entire combo just gets invalidated by 1 card, essentially. And dies really hard to 1-hand trap, and there's no amount of extenders that can really extend the Auxilla into anything, is what I would like to say, but you do have exactly 1 play. So if we are playing specifically Wake Up Centurion, we can actually use the effect of Wake Up to send a copy of Phalanx to the graveyard. And then we can link off our Auxilla if we can also manage 1 more body. And then, it doesn't have to be this. We could also use technically Gargoyle too to send the Auxilla. And then we can activate the Phalanx to resummon the Auxilla so that it can place our Primera in the end phase. And if we want to play around Nib, this is also technically a way to play around Nib. So when we make Auxilla, we have the Wake Up, we can resummon Auxilla during the end phase to either play around Nib or just as a follow-up play against like a Nib or an Effect Failure Imperm or whatever. So Wake Up is pretty good for that kind of thing. If it comes up, I guess. So, yeah. All in all, right now, the deck is pretty mid. And the timing on it is not that great, and the endboard setups and what you can actually do with these cards feels very limited. If it gets more support, we'll have to see how good the support is, but yeah. In general, these are all the important aspects, I think, that you need to know about Centurion, whether you were playing it or playing against it. And one of the things you can actually do that's kind of worth mentioning is if we have this counter trap here, there are actually a lot of things that this counter trap cannot negate. So specifically, it says when a spell trap card or monster effect is activated, then you have to send a face-up monster card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard to negate the activation. So first off, that has to send for cost. So macro effects, kill off the True Awakening. If you drop a shifter, this does nothing. It's a nothing card. And then the next thing that accompanies this is the fact that this only negates the activation, and it requires you to send a guy. So most cases you'll only have like a Trudea plus Primera, and forcing the Trudea to get sent is not that great sometimes. So they'll be a little bit miserable. So your opponent can't negate like a field spell activating. So let's say if Wraith Soth is activating or Curlerino, it's very hard for me to negate that because it'll force me to send my Trudea, and I don't want to send the Trudea in general. Because if I send the Trudea to get the Omni Negate live again, I have to specifically grab or have MF6 here to send the, or not send, to put the Auxilla into the back row, which then prevents me from making Cosmic Blazar. And then in terms of 12s, the only thing I can make is Legadia, really. And there are no really good options aside from that. So Crimson Dragon becomes out of the question, and that would lock anything that you can float into with this as well. So that is very much no bueno, one might say. But this deck sure does chain block Ash Blossom Joe Spring. And I guess you do have like a play for like Maxi. So if you get Maxied whenever, you can just very easily do what's called passing. Because let's say I normal summon or even special summon Primera and you chain Maxi to this, I can just grab like Phalanx or Centur-ion True Awakening and then just pass. Next turn we just special summon Trudea, make like Legadia, drop a Phalanx, call it a day. So Maxi doesn't really get that much mileage against Centurion, and it essentially only trades for like one negate. And it's pretty much like no different than what might be an Ash Blossom Geospring if you don't have this to, I guess, like trade for the Maxi. So yeah, that's Centurion for you. And I guess worth mentioning is Centurion Trudea is a Pyro, so you can search it off of Bonfire, but like searching it off of Bonfire isn't even that great necessarily. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Well, actually, wait, one last thing. These synchros, actually, their effects trigger on special summon and not synchro summon. So if we summon them off of Phalanx, or yeah, if we special summon them off of Phalanx, we can banish them with Phalanx to special summon, or use the graveyard effect, and this will actually trigger their effects again. And yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. So bye.